For today's notes, we're going to build a strategy page for dividing using long division. So let's start by setting up that page. We're going to write dividing using long division. And this page is going to use up pretty much our entire page of notes. So make sure as you're building your notes that you're thinking about how much space my notes are using, and you try to match that so you don't run out of space. All right, so let's get started with some vocab. Today we're going to be dividing 374 divided by 6. And let's start with some vocab. The first part of this division problem is right here, 374. This is called the dividend. And the dividend is like what you've got. It means how much you're starting with before you start dividing. So that's the dividend. The second piece of vocab that we need is the second part, the 6. The 6 is called our divisor. Divisor, I like to think of that OR on the end. That always helps me remember. When I think about words like doctor, farmer, helper, those all end in that or sound, and that usually means somebody who does something. So a divisor is somebody who is doing the dividing. It's basically how you're breaking it up. So that's what we're going to write here. How you're, U-R-E, how you're breaking it up. And it's important to think about that, especially as we start getting into word problems. We need to figure out what's the amount you've got and what's the amount that shows how you're breaking it up. All right, so that's the vocab we need for this lesson. We need to know what a dividend is and what a divisor is. Now we're ready to build our notes. As a hint, as you're setting up your notes, if you've got a pencil that you could draw lightly, or if you want to just imagine, thinking about the space down below, I'm going to imagine this imaginary line. I'm going to draw it in and then erase it, but if it helps you to have it, you can draw it in with your pencil. This is going to help me make sure my notes don't go over too far into my workspace. We're going to start by setting up the steps, and then we're going to practice doing the steps. All right, so go ahead and write with me. We're going to write in all the steps. Step 1, set up the problem. Step 2, build your table of multiples. Step 3 is going to be divide each place. Step 4, multiply to see what you used. Step 5, subtract the part you used. Step 6, bring down the next digit. And step 7, repeat until done. I know I went over my line a tiny bit. All right, I'm going to go ahead and erase that blue line that I set up to help me. Once you have your stuff written in, if you did like I did and drew like a pencil line to help you, go ahead and erase that. Oops. And then if you have got this written, then let's continue. If you're still getting caught up, go ahead and pause the video and you can restart it once you have all your steps written in. All right, so now that you've got all the notes written in, let's actually do these steps to show how it works. So step 1 asks you to set up the problem. And we're going to write the dividend, and then we're going to put the long division symbol around it, and then write the divisor. So as I do that, I have a thinking strategy. I say 374 divided by 6. So first I write my dividend, what I've got, and then as I am writing it, I write 374, and then I say divided by, as I'm drawing that long division symbol. So you can practice that to remember, divided by, and then your divisor goes on the outside. That's your 6. All right, we did step 1, set up the problem. Step 2 is build your table of multiples. Now I always have kids ask me, do I really have to build my table of multiples? Here's the deal. If you have mastered your multiplication and division facts, if you have mastered your way out of extra math, or if you have gotten 100% on your fact fluency test, then you don't need your table of multiples. However, most of you are not in that camp. Most of you have not mastered your facts at that level, and so yes, you really do need your table of multiples to avoid making silly mistakes. So let's set that up. Since we're dividing by 6, I need my table for 6. I'm going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then on the other side, I can write my multiples, 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, and 54. So that's step 2, build your table of multiples. Step 3 is divide each place. So in addition and subtraction and multiplication, we always start with our smallest place value and work our way over. Division's going to be the opposite. Division, I'm going to start with the digit that's closest to my divisor, and I'm going to go that way. So starting here, I've got 3 divided by 6. And if I think about that, looking at my table of multiples, I need at least 6 to make one group. So if I only have 3, I can't make any groups. So I'm going to say 0. I can make 0 groups. Once I figured out how many groups I can make, that's my dividing, then I can multiply to figure out what I used. I'm going to multiply the number of groups times my divisor. 0 times 6 is 0, which makes sense. 0 groups means I used 0 pieces. Then I'll subtract away what I used. 3 minus 0 is 3. And then the next step is going to be to bring down the next piece. If you did place value division with us, you would have brought your 3 up. But in long division, because we're working with longer, more complex numbers, I'm going to bring it down instead. That just makes it easier to see everything. So I bring my 7 down next to my 3, and now I'm working with the number 37. I can look at my place value chart, or my, not my place value chart, my table of multiples. There we go. And I am looking for something that's close to 37 without going over. And here I can see 6 groups of 6 is 36. So that's the closest without going over. So I'm going to say 37 divided by 6 is 6. That's my dividing. Then I can multiply to figure out what I used. 6 times 6 is 36. Then I can subtract. 7 minus 6 is 1. 3 minus 3 is 0. And then the next step is to bring down the next digit, which is this 4, and I can bring it down. In my steps, it tells me to repeat until done. So now that I brought that one down, I'm going to go back up. In fact, I'm going to ask you to draw this arrow with me. Back up to divide. That's where we go back up every time we repeat. So now I'm going to divide again. I'm working with the number 14, and I need to figure out 14 divided by 6. My closest number here without going over is 12. So I can make 2 groups. since 6 times 2 is 12. There's my dividing. Now I'm going to multiply to figure out what I used. 2 times 6 is 12. Subtract. 4 minus 2 is 2. 1 minus 1 is nothing. After I subtract, my next job is to bring down the next digit. But when I look over here, there's no more digits to bring down. That tells me I subtracted every part of this number. Since there's nothing else to bring down, I'm done dividing, which means this leftover piece is going to be my remainder. Which means 374 divided by 6 equals 62, remainder 2. Let's add one more piece of vocab. This is called the quotient. And the quotient is the answer to a division problem. All right, so that's the steps for dividing using long division. In the next video, we'll do some practice problems together on the next page.